Welcome into another episode of Sorare in the State Soccer. My name is Cristian, MLS Card Guy. We are joined, as always, by my co-host, Nashi. How are you today, buddy?
Excited, yeah. I just watched a decent, big Premier League game. Wasn't quite a fairy tale we were hoping for with our guest today, but we'll see how that goes, see if we can keep the spirits up.
Funny.
Yeah, so for everyone, we are recording very early. We're on Monday today, so this is almost like 6 days ago now. So we just watched Man United against Liverpool, and we have our resident Liverpool fan, unfortunately, Mr. Tom Bogert, Tommy Scoops. How are you today, Tom?
What's going on, guys? I don't know if this was just like good timing that as Nashi was going there about alluding to there being a game, that was actually my Wi-Fi started jumping out. And normally I get really quickly angry at like technological things. It's one of my poorer traits. But now in that one instance, rather than me going, oh, what the hell is going on? I was like, great. I didn't need to hear the rest of that about the Liverpool United game. So a little serendipitous for my Wi-Fi being weird. Hopefully that's the only time it'll happen today. But we'll see. We'll see if you bring up United again.
Hopefully the technology can keep up with us today. So we'll try to keep things rolling. But yeah, so I wanted to just start with the introduction here. Congrats on the top 10 underrated football reporters. I thought that was really, really cool. Am I the only one that thinks that's awesome?
Yeah, I'm taking it as a 100% scientifically correct list because I'm on it. I don't know what the process was. I think it was just they put out one the other day where it was like just top 10 reporters, and like I got tagged in it a few times. Like, where's that Tom Bogert? So even if that's how they picked me for the other 10. That count. As long as I'm on it, I'm counting it as scientific. And if I wasn't on it, I just ignore it and say that it doesn't count.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just after you were last on, you got the Gareth Bale scoop, and that was almost worldwide recognition for that. How did that kind of feel like a groundbreaking moment for you personally? Because that was literally just after we spoke to you last time. And I saw Fabrizio Romano, who's now actually partnered with Sorare. I don't know if you saw that, but he mentioned you out there, and that was a pretty cool moment for you, huh?
Yeah, that was definitely the biggest piece of news I've broken, and like I think I could tell. Like, I mean, obviously you can just look at like social media impressions and like tweets, retweets, all that. Like, so like I knew that it was bigger, but like I really knew that it like transcended things. And like I got like 10 or 15 texts from people in my life that aren't football fans, and was like, holy shit, that was you? Like, I know Gareth Bale. It's like he's somebody who like transcends. You don't just have to be a football fan to know who Gareth Bale is, because of like that's the level of his superstar. And I even like wasn't really prepared for that. And so like I thought that was pretty cool. So like again, that was a bit of a whirlwind. That was on like a Saturday morning my time. So it was kind of difficult with timing of technically I was supposed to be off. I'm like going to the beach with my girlfriend, and I'm like, oh my God, like I didn't have any idea this was happening. Like, you get one source on it, and then you're like trying to track it down. It's a Saturday morning. Thank God she's an angel. She's understanding that sometimes these things happen, and like I might have to be glued to my phone for a little bit. So it was definitely a whirlwind morning at the beach there.
So how does that kind of work when you get like a new like tip or scoop or anything? Do you just kind of immediately follow up with a bunch of different sources and just kind of try and confirm it as fast as possible and get it out there? Or are you going through and digging and calling everybody and making sure everything's like really, really nailed on? Like how do you balance like the speed versus the accuracy?
That one was tough, particularly because I like, it's a Saturday morning. So I forget if LAFC were playing on a Sunday. And like, I try to be respectful of the people I talk to with time zones and everything. So like, I'm like, oh my God, like I need to make more calls, but it's like, 7 a.m. in LA. I can't really do that right now. Like, so it was very anxious, and like, it was something that big. Like, you knew that other people might be on it. So it's concerning, but like, yeah, you just try to talk to as many people as you can. Be first and foremost, like I have like really bad anxiety about getting anything wrong. So like, I'm never going to really kind of put something out there too soon or without being like certain. So, and like in that one, it was like, as I was hearing about it, it was like, this isn't just like a possibility to watch. It was like, I think this is done. Like, so the whole thing was like, oh my God, like I got to do it right now.
Yeah, I can imagine that there's that moment as you fired a tweet out though. Like, what percentage of certainty are you at to hit send on that tweet? 100%. You have to be 100?
Yeah. And like, there's other, like, I'm always 100% certain in the info that I'm getting, or if I'm tweeting about it. But there will be times that like it's like I try to be over explain and like finalizing, hey, it's not totally done yet, or hey, like 99%. Like I try to make sure that like things at least don't get taken out of context, or like I'm trying to be as cautious and as correct, literal down to like whatever I'm hearing, rather than like overblowing it. And again, like it's I'm really, really anxious about getting something wrong and feeling like, all right, your credibility is going to be gone, even though, we could get in a larger argument that it seems like people get things wrong and people just forget until the next tweet. So maybe I'm being overly worried, but that's been a good barometer for me in my career up to now. So I'm not going to change that.
It was absurd. I don't know if you followed it with Fabrizio Romano with the Mark Cucurella from Brighton to Chelsea, where he put it out there, and then there was it was literally like a week of space where there was some uncertainty.
And Brighton put out like a statement regarding his tweet. I was like, that's terrifying.
Yeah, I can't imagine being in his shoes. And he stuck by his word, and in the end, he was fundamentally right, which almost is even better. But yeah, it must be pretty stressful when you guys position there to, especially in that little moment in between, you just pray and nothing goes wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Like somebody sent me that and was like, "Is anything like this ever happened to you?" It was like, "Oh my god, I'd be terrified." And again, good for him. He's a genuinely a really nice guy, and we've interacted kind of numerous times. He's super kind, and the New Jersey and me that I'm a little bit more direct about things. I would be like, if I'm 100% certain this is correct, I'd probably be angry, and I'm sure he was getting a lot of tweets back from, "Oh my god, you're a fraud," all this other nonsense. I probably would have responded a little bit angrier, or he responded with a smiley face and was something about I'm confident in my reporting, good luck, something like that, which was just super kind and mature and a lot better than I probably would have handled it. If I could be no, I know I'm right. Whoever you were to call me an idiot, I'm going to track down every tweet and remind you that I was right. So again, it's good that he's a bit more mature maybe than I am. So I think it was better that he was in that situation, not me.
Yeah, I'd be doing the playground thing where you're saying, "I'll bet you any amount of money. You want to put any money on it?" I know it's going to happen. The bravado would have to be there for me too. Yeah.
So let's talk about one that's kind of ongoing now that I think you just broke in here today, maybe. Cristian Tello to LAFC. You said it kind of hinges on Brian Rodriguez leaving as well. Where are we at with that, and how's this kind of unfolded? I think I saw a thing that said it was almost done or pretty close to done. So where does that leave us? I guess the rich kind of getting richer here.
Yeah, so there have been some reports in Spain that says it's completely done or whatever. Again, I'm not here to parse words or mince words, but from what I'm hearing is that it's very close, and that could be alluding to the people have put out contract figures and contract lengths. So the way that I'm interpreting it is that either a deal's agreed or they know that a deal can be agreed. But it can't happen without Brian Rodriguez leaving, or in more complicated scenarios, it could hinge on other players. But again, just stylistically, not even with the salary cap stuff, it wouldn't make sense to sign him without Brian Rodriguez leaving. And again, Rodriguez wants to leave. Club America and LAFC have gotten closer on a deal. Last week, I reported that. That's still not done. So Tello's still not technically done. There's a little bit of moving parts with the ins and outs here. But yeah, so Cristian Tello, the former Barcelona and Real Betis winger, should be in MLS soon, as long as the Brian Rodriguez deal gets done. And just a quick point that somebody pointed out, the transfer window closed 3 weeks ago. How is this possible? MLS teams can still sign free agents until September 2nd. So, and he's a free agent the same way that Carlos Gil's brother Nacho Gil is just signed with New England Revolution. So players who are free agents can still be signed.
Now, what does that mean for LAFC going forward here? Because they've already obviously got one of the deepest teams we've ever seen. They've got talent up and down the board for days. What does that mean for them? Is that just kind of another chip, another card that they can play? Is he going to be kind of a centerpiece? What do they view his role as?
I'm not sure. Gareth Bale has been a borderline human victory cigar in his month and a half with the team. Then you have Brian Rodriguez. If everybody's here and fit, Brian Rodriguez wasn't a starter, and theoretically Tello's coming in for him. Denny Bouanga should be viewed as I know he doesn't have the name of Cristian Tello because he didn't play for Barcelona. He hasn't been around as long, but Denis Bouanga is a huge talent, and the way that he all balances and complements Vela, Bale, and Chicho Arango. That guy is, as if all goes well, as long as he's fit, whenever he should be getting here soon if he isn't already for his visa and stuff. That guy's a starter. So the way I see it is Bouanga, Arango, and Vela as starters. So that leaves Gareth Bale and Cristian Tello as air quote subs or rotation, competition, whatever you want to call it. That's a long-winded way of saying I have no goddamn clue because there's so many options for this team. It's like you said, that's the deepest front line in MLS history. Full stop.
Easily, by a long way too. And I know they've been working on a Mamadou Fall here as well, which that one kind of surprised me a little bit because, the whole reasoning behind Chiellini was, well, he's going to mentor Mamadou Fall. And now off goes Mamadou Fall after 1 month of Chiellini. I guess this was just something where, was it Villarreal or Valencia?
Villarreal.
They just kind of came in and said, hey, yeah, he's trained with us before. We like him. He's going off. Like, we just want him back. Is that kind of what happened there?
Yeah, as far as my understanding, like there's been all year a ton of teams that are interested in this player. He's I think he turned 19 during the season, I believe, but he's a 19-year-old center back that was starting for the first half of the year. He was a starter for the best team in a top flight domestic league. Like that, there's not that many of them. So like his physical profile and his technical profile is like, it's every European club's dream. And these European clubs, they want to sign these players as soon and as early as possible to get them into the training and stuff. Like I've talked to a big English club. They have a scout here, and like the point is that they want to sign guys from 16 to 19. They like don't even want a 20-year-old. Like they want to get the player into their system as soon as possible. And again, like you said, he trained with Villarreal as a teenager at multiple times before he signed with LAFC and MLS. Like that's a player who, again, I don't think that this is related to anything. And I thought at the time when they were going with the whole, who's a better mentor for somebody like Mamadou than Chiellini, I think that was just a good way to deflect questions, not having to answer. Well, if there's interest, we'll see if a deal makes sense. The only thing that I'm surprised about is I'm not aware of any purchase option in this deal, which is odd to me because, obviously Villarreal would do this because they want him for a long-term future. And maybe it's just something that they just didn't set a price between the two clubs and they'll continue talking about it. But again, I'm sure the idea here is for Villarreal to purchase him outright.
Yeah, do you think it's a kind of like a little bit of they're getting to see him, it's a trial, it's got a trial filter, they'll see how he embeds over there, because his potential and his ceiling is really high. But it's kind of funny when we see these really young players get these deals with these huge European teams, and Gaga Slonina comes to mind. And we're kind of sat here wondering, it's kind of hard to see how clearly their role is and what the purpose is of these moves. Do you think Slonina is going to be in the Chelsea system, or do you see him being loaned out like we've seen with a lot of their youth players being brought in the future?
Yeah, particularly particularly a goalkeeper, like because he's obviously not better than Edouard Mendy. He's, even for all the stuff with Kepa and anything else, like he's not ready there. Like since like June, he's been a below average MLS goalkeeper. And that's not to kind of unnecessarily be critical or take shots at the kid. He's an 18-year-old starting goalkeeper in a top flight league. Like Chelsea didn't buy him thinking he's ready. Chicago don't even think that he's like the finished product. Like, but they've had the vision and the foresight to let him play through mistakes and stuff. So which is great, but that's all. Like he's absolutely needs another loan. He could theoretically come back to Chicago. I'm sure he's open to that possibility. I know the club are open to that possibility for obvious reasons. But I'm assuming that he's going to stay on loan somewhere in Europe next year. But like when January comes, like maybe they'll let him play half a season with the U23s or something like that. But like he's somebody who's going to need more playing time and like championship level rather than like a lower tier Premier League club. Like this is a player who's not a Chelsea first team goalkeeper right now. And again, that's because he's 18 years old and there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, that's absolutely going to be the point. It's going to be, I assume, multiple loans rather than just, 1 year thing.
Yeah. I mean, Chelsea have that connection with, I think it's Vitesse in the Eredivisie, and they've utilized that in a long time. And we've got another player from the MLS, an American potential international, heading over there in Djordje Mihalovic. How do you sort of see that played out?
Yeah, so that deals to Izzy Alkmaar. I probably pronounced it wrong. Really, I haven't heard it kind of out loud since Josie Altidore was there, so it's been a while. Yeah, I didn't think that they had $6 million to spend on a 23-year-old, so that was pleasantly surprising that they kind of realized his talent rather than just, hey, maybe we can scoop up a player for cheap or cheap within our budget. Like this is a legitimately huge transfer for them. I think somebody either looked into the history and said he's like one of their like top 3 most expensive of all time, or whatever. I could be completely wrong, but I think that fits. So yeah, like Djordje is somebody who I'm surprised that Bologna didn't come in for him. Montreal and Bologna have the same owner. He's been in Bologna to train, I believe, twice now. He was there in the winter. I don't know. And again, it's probably my own bias from watching him week in, week out and watching him grow to what he is. Like before he got hurt, he was an MVP candidate. So like I'm not a big Bologna expert. I'm not a big Serie A expert, But like, I'm really surprised that there wasn't a role for him in that team, and that they didn't lean on their relationship with Montreal to say, hey, we'd love to sign him. So I think it's great that he's going to the Netherlands. I think that's a league that's going to fit him really well, in which you'll play against some other, big teams like Ajax and PSV are really, really good. Feyenoord are really, really good. But also you're not like, you're also going to end up with not too much disrespect for the lower part of that league. That's the worst teams in the Netherlands aren't like light years better than MLS teams. He's clearly can play at that level. When Luca De La Torre did, even though he was in one of those bottom teams and he went to Celta Vigo, like, I think this is a really good jumping off point for Djordje Mihalovic in Europe.
So what does that mean for his, I guess, World Cup bid, right? He had the injury. He was playing really, really well, had the injury. Now, he gets to go over to Holland. Does this give him more of a platform, or is this, is it the same platform and he just has to go and integrate into a new team immediately and start to get onto that World Cup plane, or what does this do for his chances of the U.S. team?
And I'm glad that you point that up real before getting to the World Cup and the U.S. stuff. I don't have it confirmed yet. There have been some reports. I know that Montreal want this deal to go through on January 1st. So Djordje says the last couple months of the season. That hasn't been confirmed or announced by I believe that Jeff Carlisle of ESPN might have put something out. And if Carlisle says a loan back is happening, that means it is indeed happening. So I guess I can't say 100%, but I'm pretty sure that he's staying at Montreal for the rest of the season. And it's not technically a loan because the MLS window is closed. So it's just the deal's agreed for January 1st, if that's how it's structured, which I believe it is. So in that vein, I'm not sure. The timing of his injury could not have been worse, and he really hasn't gotten back to that form. If he's not selected for this camp coming up in September, I don't see how there's any chance that you could bring a player in after he was only there like briefly in the winter, I believe. Not even for that long, because he was with Bologna too. So if he's not called into this camp, I can't really see a picture in which he's called to the World Cup. But hey, I mean, if he's playing out of his mind in September and October, like there's always a chance. But I don't know. For me, we'll know his chances by if he's getting called to this next squad.
Let's talk about another guy that might get called into this squad and probably will get called into the September squad. Just signed a huge contract extension with Cincinnati, and obviously Brandon Vazquez has been completely absurd and out of his mind. First of all, is this the best front three in the league outside of LAFC that Cincinnati has? And secondly, where is Vazquez in his development, and what are the chances he makes the World Cup team?
That's a great question with kind of the attacking trios in the front three. I think Cincinnati are in that elite group. I'd probably put Philly slightly ahead of them, but I don't know, man. Lucho Costa leads the league in assists. Vazquez is tied for second in goals, and Brenner is only a $12 million player from former Brazil Youth International.
They've been horrific first half of the season too. He's been lights out the second half.
Yeah, and again, this is why they didn't sell him for 40 cents on the dollar when Brazilian clubs wanted to take him on a free loan because he was struggling and was open to leaving because of this. They saw him as this two striker system, this kind of front footed system that Pat Noonan is playing. That these three together was the idea, and they've been better than they could possibly imagine. But yeah, with Brandon Vazquez, as I reported today, he signed a long-term contract extension. It's through 2025 with a club option for 2026. His current deal was supposed to expire. They had a club option for next season, but that's it. So that's a contract that's a very difficult situation if teams are calling and you can't really get full value if you're going to transfer him. Again, I'd be really, really surprised if he's not in this September camp with the national team. And same thing as I was saying with Mihalovic, but probably less so because it's a forward and forwards can just score goals and get in. But if he's not in the September camp, what else could he possibly have been showing that's going to make over September and October, that'll make the coaching staff go, oh yeah, let's bring him in. Right now he's playing incredibly. He's been one of the best players in the league. My colleague Matt Doyle called him the best center forward in MLS since Tati Castellanos has left, which is huge praise and goes to his form. And there's a lot of deeper reads about why he's so good, that he's simultaneously really, really good at hold up play and one of the most dangerous, off the back shoulder center back, vertical runners in the league in terms of movement and timing and everything. So if he's not on the September camp, what else could you possibly need to see in September, October to give him a chance? Right now, he's got to be. He's just got to be. If you were picking a squad, the World Cup squad tomorrow, it's him and Ferreira, and then insert whatever third striker you want, whether it's P-Folk or Sargent or Haji Wright or whoever. I think that Vazquez like should have the inside track at this point.
Yeah, and I think like with Brandon Vazquez, with his development in his technical abilities, qualities, finishing, his movement this year, he just adds a complete different dimension to anyone else you've almost got to look at with the hold-up play. You've got brilliant talent behind him, brilliant players behind him, and maybe he doesn't need to be banging in the goals like he is at club level to offer a different option and even more for this team. So I think if it's me, yeah, it's a no-brainer. He's on that plane, and I'm really happy for him because he seems like his head's in the right place. You know, he's a young kid. He's been doing really well, but he sort of doesn't feel like he's getting to him. He's still got that work ethic and that bit between his teeth. So it's good to see. Good to see.
And his career arc, like we spent a lot of time, like the narrative for Haji Wright was a really cool one. He was this huge prospect. Like Dortmund came to watch him, and that's how they found Christian Pulisic because it was one of the youth national team games. Brandon Vazquez was on that team. Like Brandon Vazquez, like was maybe not quite as the prospect that teams thought Haji Wright was, but he was this big time talent coming out of the U.S. youth national teams. Mexico had him for a little bit. He's still eligible for both the United States and Mexico. But he told Tio Dienes Michele Ginon that he hasn't spoken to anybody from the Mexican Federation. So that shouldn't be a worry. But like regardless, he was this really, really big talent, U17 World Cup, like coming through youth national teams. And then his career kind of stalled. He left Club Tijuana because he's from San Diego. So that's right next to the border. For those who don't know the kind of geography of the West Coast, California to there, like it's right just beneath San Diego. So it's like right on the border. So he's an American kid that was going to Tijuana. And then he signed with Atlanta United to start his professional career. Atlanta didn't play him very much because they had Joseph Martinez, they had Miguel Almiron, all these players. Tata Martino was the head coach, who's pretty notoriously a big, veteran player rather than, giving a lot of youth a chance. Goes to Cincinnati. It's not great at first. He's still not getting a lot of chances. That team's a dumpster fire. And then at the end of last season, when the new GM, Chris Albrighton, took over and said, I want to do this like Philly. We need to play a diamond. Just give this a chance. And Vazquez scores 4 goals and has 3 assists in like 800 minutes at the end of the season. And then he continues right on with that. Like, so this is all real. This isn't just a run of form. Like, this is who he is now.
Yeah, I think he just fits the style that Cincinnati plays so well. The question now is, does he fit the style the U.S. national team wants to play? Or does Jesus Ferreira fit that style? Which of those two guys kind of is more stylistically a fit with the other players around them for you going into the World Cup?
I mean, you'd have to give it to Ferreira just because you've seen him, what he's, with during the World Cup, the qualifying cycle, and he plays under the former U.S. national team assistant, Nico Estevez, in Dallas. Like, they play the Berhalter system or something close enough to it because not every coach is the same, obviously. So you just kind of have to give that to Ferreira and like his fit as like air quote false nine or whatever you want to call it. Like the center forward in that system has to do so much. And that's part of the reason why Jordan Pefok it took a little while for him to get a chance, and then he got a chance, didn't play well, and hasn't really gotten one since, is because he does not do anywhere near enough in the buildup, in the prep. Like, he's there to score goals, which he's very, very good at, but like that system required a lot more than just that. So Ferreira has shown he's really good at all the other things, and this year has been his best goal scoring year. I think Brandon Vazquez can also do that. But again, like, we've only seen Ferreira do it because Vazquez hasn't been with the national team yet. And Vazquez doesn't play in a system in which the former national team assistant is the coach. So again, like, I'm not saying that he can't, and I quite think that he'll be very good at it. It's just, it'd be disingenuous to say that, that he fits better than Ferreira without seeing it.
And another team that will have a former assistant U.S. national team coach next year is San Jose. You've been all over this Luchi Gonzalez to San Jose kind of deal. Obviously, he's going to start after the World Cup, so he's going to continue with the U.S. national team through then. But what does this mean next year come for guys like Cade Cowell, guys like Benji Kikanovic, guys like Jeremy Abobasi? Does that kind of give them that same Jesus Ferreira kind of natural link to the U.S. team? And does that kind of help out their chances of maybe not in 22, but maybe even 26 and beyond?
Yeah, and like, again, for somebody like Abobasi, again, on like the caveat of I'm not expecting him to get called in September, regardless. Like, it just seems like Berhalter and the staff don't entirely rate him. But again, that's he should be in the first kind of camp post World Cup because of how well he's played this year. So yeah, Luchi taking over, that helps a lot for somebody like him because it'll be more of a national team system. Luchi and Greg Berhalter are obviously close because he's on the staff, but more for Cade Cowell. Luchi is regarded as one of the best in terms of development. He was the academy before he was the Dallas head coach. He was the academy director. He's integral to Ricardo Pepi, Brian Reynolds, Reggie Cannon, all of these guys, like from their days as kids in the academy before they were pros. And, first and foremost, credit to the players themselves, because I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but like Lucci oversaw all of that. So to get somebody that is regarded in this renown for development. And again, Matias Almeida, one of the things he was really good at was giving young players chances and the mentality side of things. And I know how to let them play through mistakes. I know when I need to take them out of the spotlight. He was really good at that. He also played archaic tactics. How does that really help Cade Cowell outside of playing in transition? Like, in addition to having somebody who's really good at development, he'll play a real system. He'll play an adult system. He'll play a system that other teams in Europe that are already interested in him, they're going to let him, he's going to play more of just normal soccer instead of this man marking crap that they were doing. Like, it was a high school soccer game. And again, sorry to just take out Matias Almeida so many times, but it's just frustrating that, if that was an American coach doing that, he would have been fired after 10 games. It's just frustrating just because he's had this resume as a player. And again, he did well at other stops, but it was clearly again, I don't think that aids very well in young players maturing and learning intelligently how to play the game. So I'm Cade Cowell is who I'm most excited for about this news, because Lucci's definitely evolved as a coach. He understands, and again, it sounds silly to say this out loud, but he understands that, results or you're going to get fired. He thought that things were going fine in Dallas. Results kind of took a step back. It doesn't matter that you helped produce Ricardo Pepi into a 20 million transfer. You're losing. This is first team football. This isn't the academy anymore. You need to do both. So I think that that's going to be really beneficial for Cade Cowell.
He also kind of came out and said, look, I've grown, in my vision of everything. And I think he did learn a lot under Berhalter. So I'm really excited to see how he kind of handles this San Jose job, and kind of looking at some of the other guys, like even Jackson Ewell, different guys that were at one time in the U.S. picture and now are not really. Does he even maybe get another chance? He's not an old guy. I think he's 24 maybe. There's tons of other people in San Jose too.
Not to be mean to Jackson Ewell, I just don't think he's athletic enough for the top level of international football. And what you have Tyler Adams and Gianluca Busio, some of these other players that there's not really a need. And again, you can be a really good MLS player and have a great career. There's just because that you're not better than Tyler Adams doesn't mean anything negative, even though it sounds negative. But with Lucci, before he took the first team role at Dallas, he hadn't had a senior coaching position. He was the academy coach and he coached the U17s. He overdid the academy. So his year with Berhalter was so important for him to learn from more experienced coaches around him, to learn without being kind of in the big seat and having to do all that stuff. And he said, he's grown in terms of just culture, locker room, and tactically as well. So I think that he'll be a little bit less naive. I think the final third patterns that kind of eluded him quite a bit in Dallas that they never quite got a hold of, and that's why the results are. And again, Dallas has spent a lot more money since he left. So if I was him, I'd be a little upset. But I think that those patterns and everything are going to be so crucial that he's still going to have his own principles that he had, and he's still going to have a lot of things, but he's definitely evolved. And again, from what I've heard from talking to people around Lucci, around the national team, that this year has been really, really important for his own development.
That's
great. So Tom, we've been talking about teams potentially that we think are going to make a breakthrough next season, already looking ahead. And it sounds like San Jose is on your list there for them reasons, new coach. Is there anyone else?
How much money they spend?
Huh? Yeah.
We'll see how much money they spend.
Right. Do you think, is there anyone else on your list there that you're looking at and think they could add a couple pieces here and there, maybe a new coach change, system change? You think looking towards next season, they're going to sort of step it up and make a market performance improvement?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that Toronto are going to make the playoffs. I could very easily be wrong. It's not like that they're far away. So in my mind, Toronto counts in this question. So that's, it's a pretty easy one given the talent that they've added this summer, but they're still such a thin team. You could really see it when they just played their third game in 7 or 8 days. And Insigne and Bernadeschi and Criscito, again, they're coming. They've been here for a month or month and a half, whatever it is. They're clearly wearing down because they have to carry so much of a burden, and they don't have the luxury to rest these guys because they were in such a hole. So if it continues like that and they don't make the playoffs, they're the obvious answer that they're going to be looked at as one of the favorites in the East, and another offseason where they'll have another window to continue to move on from bad decisions of previous regimes and build out some depth. This starting 11 is pretty much there. I think that they need a new goalkeeper and at least one new defender, and 2 if Richie Larea isn't able to stay around. So, but they were close. They're the top end talent that they were able to kind of change on the fly this summer was nothing short of incredibly impressive. and ambitious from ownership that were just content to like take losses on Tello and then Salcedo and then Pozuelo and all these things to make this change. So they're ahead of schedule in my own mind. So they're the obvious answer next year. But if you're somebody who believes that they're going to make the playoffs, like then it'd be, San Jose or Kansas City. I'm optimistic about what San Jose do. And Luchi Gonzalez has been saying in every interview that ownership has told him that they're going to spend more. I'll believe that when I see it. But there's, I guess, if they're telling him this and he's going public with it, they kind of have to. So as long as they add a couple of pieces and show some ambition, then like I definitely am looking forward to them.
What about a team like Atlanta? Because you talked about the on paper talent. They obviously have a ton of it. They have players to spare from all over Europe and all over South America, and it just has not clicked at all. They aren't playing together. Is it something where the coach needs to be changed and the tactics needs to be changed? Has he lost the dressing room with the whole Joseph Martinez situation? Because this should be one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference, and they're one spot above DC in the standings right now.
Yeah, but again, like if you wanted to like look at it glass half full, it's 5 points below the line. Like I know that time's running out, and it looks extremely unlikely that they're going to make the playoffs because they have to jump 6 teams or whatever it is. But like again, in their defense, Miles Robinson was one of the most irreplaceable players in the league because of what he kind of held together for this team and the way that he could put out fires and kind of scrambling and defending. Like rather than it being a system, he's a one-man guy who put out a lot of fires for this team. And then there's Brad Guzan, who's a starting goalkeeper. And then Gutman missed 3 months. Brooks Lennon missed however long. Ozzy Alonso, who was probably going to start 20 to 22 games, he got hurt at the beginning of the season. Like, so I'm sympathetic in that regard to this team. But again, as you pointed out, like you look at this attacking talent, it's like $45 million worth of transfer fees. Like this is one of the most expensive and opulent teams. And the idea of spending so much on your 3 DPs is that you're supposed to have more room for error and you're supposed to be able to withstand some of these injuries. Again, like the Miles Robinson one is really irreplaceable, but like, you also spend $16 million on Thiago Almada. Like, so he's supposed to be more than sometimes getting benched because he's not like totally bought in. I don't think that Gonzalo Pineda is like air quote lost the dressing room or whatever. The team seems to react well, even if Joseph isn't starting, because Cisneros is actually running and Joseph isn't. And so that kind of helps the team flow a little bit more, even though it's really sad to see this state of Joseph after, the highs and everything that he's brought over the first 3 or 4 years, whatever it was before he got hurt of his MLS career. So I'm still holding out hope that next season maybe it looks better, but we'll see. I think that Pineda should be safe throughout the offseason, but if kind of they finish around where they are right now, as you kind of imagine, give or take a couple places, but, comfortably below the playoff line, I still think Pineda is going to be safe, but he would be at the top of the list of like, all right, if they go 8 or 10 games to start next season slow, then like he's gone.
So what does this mean for them next season? Do you think that, they get Miles Robinson back, they potentially get Guzan back, and they're now okay? Or is it just kind of, are there more problems that need to be fixed?
That's a good question. I'm a really firm believer in Miles Robinson. I think he's one of the top 3 center backs in this league. And I think that he fits kind of perfectly what this team is doing. So stylistically, again, I think that solves a lot of problems, but they're going to desperately need a defensive midfielder. And it can't be Ozzy Alonso coming off torn ACL at age 38 or whatever he is. Like one of my kind of key tenets in roster building in this league is defensive mid is so important. Like they're like force multipliers in how much easier it makes the game for those around them. So if Atlanta don't address that, they could still have a lot more problems. So I think that's the one position I'm looking at them this offseason. They've definitely gone for air quote flash over that in previous years. I know that they spent money on Santiago Sosa, but like they haven't addressed that position since Jeff Larenowitz phased out as a starter and then retired. So that's kind of the key thing to look at for that team for next year. Or again, they'll have problems like there are this year.
So I want to ask you one more question here about the playoffs and kind of the end of this year. Either conference, whichever way you want to go. If you want to give me one team that's in the playoffs right now that will not make it, and one team that is not in the playoffs right now that will make it.
It is, like looking at these, like in the East, 5th through 13th is separated by 6 points. And in the West, 5th through 11th is 6 points. Like there's a lot of different answers. And 2 days ago, teams around the playoff line. So I'm going to keep this as like just somewhere in that group, whether they are or aren't above the line. Like, yeah. I think I do think that Columbus are going to get in pretty comfortably. They're like right on the line right now. I just think that team is, I would take them ahead of the Red Bulls right now. I would maybe even take them ahead of NYCFC or Montreal. Like I view them as like a top 4 team. So I think that their quality is going to kind of win out and they'll finish comfortably enough ahead of the playoff line. And then the team that I wouldn't, again, I've already given the Toronto take. I know that people are big on that, but I don't know. Orlando, I'd be worried about. Orlando and Miami. Again, I think that they're both doing, like, particularly Miami, like they shouldn't be in this playoff race, like given where this roster was 8 months ago. But that's going to be kind of difficult to hang on here. But again, I think that's a difficult one to call because Cincinnati is one of the teams I think that would get above the line. New England should be too. So it's just, there's not a lot of room for some of these. Like, I don't think the Red Bulls are safe. They're 6 points ahead of the playoff line. I don't think that they're safe. I think that they're going to need a couple of big results or it's going to get really, really tenuous. And then out west, it's difficult. Like Seattle, we've literally never seen them miss the playoffs. So like, I'm going to have to see it to believe it. So I'm still, you continue to wait for the run that you think's coming that hasn't come. I think that they're going to get over the line. And again, that's probably me just giving them too much stock for what they have previously done, even though what they previously did was 3.5 months ago or whatever, become the first MLS team to win CCL. Like, this is the same team. So yeah, that's a team. And then if you had to take somebody out, like LA or Real Salt Lake, I've been saying this about Real Salt Lake all season, but like, I don't know what in the nicest possible way. I don't understand how they're picking up so many points. So maybe I shouldn't expect them to kind of drop below, but the Galaxy, we'll see how that works. They're still extremely flawed and a little bit frustrating for all the chances they create that they're not putting away. So